I'm the most hated fiancé of a rich young master. On the night before the wedding, he was still entangled with his first love. So, I ran away overnight and asked my best friend at the hospital to give him a fake death certificate. Who knew that the man, who always treated me coldly, would completely break down the moment he heard the news of my death. A month before the wedding, I got a text message. It was a voice recording. When I played it, it was my fiancé Vincent's voice. "You think you're not good enough for me just because you might get married and divorced. It's fine. I'll get married too. If you change your mind, come find me. The bride can still be you." Clearly, this text was sent by Vincent's first love, Lisa. She taunted me, "Vivian, don't think you've won. You see, Vincent doesn't love you. He has always loved me." I calmly replied and then turned off my phone. The fact that Vincent doesn't love me doesn't need Lisa to tell me. In his eyes, I'm just a woman who impressed his mother and aimed to climb up the social ladder. Unfortunately, my brother didn't know this. A month ago, as an accountant for Booth's Group's subsidiary, he took the fall for everything and went to jail to protect the Booths. My brother is an upright man, and his willingness to take the blame was only for my sake. "My sister has always liked you since she was a child." On Vincent's desk, I found my brother's handwritten letter to him. "I'm a useless brother and can't give her a good life, but you can. Please take good care of her and make her happy." Seeing my brother's letter, I cried my eyes out and frantically called Vincent countless times, but he didn't answer once. That day, he came home very late, carrying the sweet, woody floral scent of Lisa's favorite perfume, called Morning After. Seeing me cry uncontrollably, Vincent instinctively opened his arms, intending to give me a comforting hug. But I stepped back a few paces in that perfume scent and turned my head. Vincent's face immediately turned cold. "That incident was partly your brother's responsibility. It's better for one to take the fall than for everyone to be implicated. He did the right thing by protecting the bigger picture for the company." My heart turned icy cold, unable to believe that the person saying this was the same youth who once brought me hot pear juice during my overnight study and menstrual pains in the library's dawn light. "After your brother got jailed, his department was unsettled. I thought of placing you there. You're his sister, and seeing you take charge would surely reassure everyone." I curled up on the sofa with stabbing abdominal pain. "I'm not going." Vincent frowned. "Vivian, you're my wife, and you need to take responsibility. We don't keep idle rich ladies in our family." I burst into tears, dampening my collar. "Vincent, you still remember I'm your wife." Maybe my sarcasm was too obvious, and Vincent's back stiffened before he quickly turned and left. "Can you leave, Vincent?" In the quiet clinic, my best friend Susan was silent for a long time before she lowly asked me, "If this continues, your body won't be able to take it." I knew what Susan meant. A year ago, I'd already been diagnosed with depression, relying on medication daily to stabilize my emotions. Even in summer, I wore long sleeves and pants, because lifting my sleeves would reveal the scars from my self-harm during emotional breakdowns. I started to frequently fall sick and get fevers. A minor cold could easily turn into pneumonia. The mind and body affect each other. Susan's eyes reddened. "Vivian, you're very sick. You must leave Vincent, or all treatment will only address the symptoms, not the root cause." I knew this, yet after a long silence, I still shook my head. "I can't leave Vincent. Or rather, I can't afford to leave him. My brother and I lost our parents when we were young and were raised by our grandmother. In high school, my grandmother fell ill when my brother had just started college. Our family had no source of income. Somehow, Vincent found out about this. He not only secretly paid for my grandmother's hospital fees, but also helped me apply for a study grant with the principal. He even helped me with my class duties. Classmates would often tease, "Vincent, do you like Vivian?" He didn't respond, just winked at me, signaling I could go take care of my grandmother first. Vincent was such a warm youth then. He helped me yet respected my dignity. For me, at that time, he was like a light, illuminating my poor and bleak youth. I treasured his gifts in my bookcase and filled my diary with his name. Seeing this, my brother laughed and asked, "Like him?" Blushing, I earnestly nodded. "I like him a lot, really a lot." But Vincent also had someone he liked. That person was Lisa. Lisa was a year ahead of us, known as the school beauty, vibrant and bold. More importantly, she matched Vincent's status. But Vincent's mother didn't like Lisa. God knows what the twists and turns of grudges between these wealthy families were. But Lisa ended up marrying a pharmaceutical company's chairman, and Vincent was arranged to date, and eventually agreed to marry me, under his mother's pressure. By then, I had just graduated from college and joined Booth's Group as his mother's executive assistant. She liked me a lot, saying she saw her younger self in me. The matchmaking worked, and Vincent agreed to marry me. My brother was genuinely happy for me. Our Vivian is finally marrying love. Back then, I was just as sweet inside. I wasn't unaware of Vincent's indifference, but I thought it was his business poise from years in the field. Until one day we had a fight. I questioned Vincent about why he was still calling Lisa, who was living abroad, every day. He got mad and finally sneered out the truth, because I never forgot about her. Is that what you wanted to hear? I was stunned, my whole body trembling uncontrollably. Stop acting like you've been struck by lightning. My mom's not here. You don't need to put on a show for her, Vincent said coldly. You've already used her to climb your way up to become my wife. What more do you want? Only then did I realize how laughable and pathetic my idea of rekindling love and marrying my first love seemed to Vincent. But it was too late. My brother had no idea how damaged this marriage was, so he took the fall for Vincent without a second thought. Don't feel bad for him. His biggest wish is to see you happy. In the clinic, I finally broke down into tears while talking about my brother. I still need the company to hire a lawyer team for my brother's case, I sobbed. At this point, I can't afford to offend Vincent or his mother. Susan turned pale with worry. But if you keep waiting, your body will completely collapse. She cried, too. Vivian, if this continues, you might die. I touched the scars on my wrist and softly said, sometimes I think maybe dying is the best option. Don't say that. Susan hugged me. Vivian, think about your grandma. She's still in the hospital. Your brother is waiting to reunite with you. You can't die. In her embrace, my body suddenly stiffened. What if I just pretend to die now? Susan released me, confused. What do you mean? If I kill myself, take grandma away, and my brother hears that I'm dead, maybe he'll recant his confession. I clutched Susan's hand tightly. Susan, only you can help me with this. Back home, I opened my diary in my bedroom and began writing slowly. I wrote about all my love for Vincent over the years and the utter despair from being heartbroken. After finishing, I placed the diary in the drawer. Along with it, I put my diagnosis certificate for depression and my phone. There were texts from Lisa on my phone, not just one. Ever since the news of my wedding with Vincent came out, she'd been sending me vile messages from various numbers. She called me a whore, said I was unworthy of Vincent, and that my desperate face longing for love was disgusting. She said a rat like me should always live in the shadows, and I should take my beggar grandma and worthless brother and die. Now that I'm really going to kill myself, I'm leaving these texts here. One day, Vincent will see them. This is my parting gift to him. I put the diary, depression diagnosis, and phone in the drawer, locked it, and put the key in my pocket. Just as I finished, Vincent came home. Exhausted, I curled up on the bed, too weak to greet him. After coming back from Susan's, I'd been running a fever. Writing in my diary had drained me. The housekeeper came over, touching my forehead. Mrs. Vivian needs to go to the hospital. Vincent, changing from his shoes into velvet loungewear, didn't respond, his expression cold. The housekeeper approached him. Mr. Vincent, should I call a driver to take her to the hospital? No need, Vincent replied indifferently. She just wants attention. The housekeeper bit her lip, not daring to say more, and went to the kitchen to make me kanji. Vincent didn't look at me until about half an hour later, when he finished his work on his laptop. His expression was colder than ever. What did you do to Lisa? I was puzzled. What? Vincent's face was filled with anger. Don't play dumb. Lisa told me you messaged her, saying a divorced woman isn't worthy of me. I stayed silent, then laughed unexpectedly. It was funny how Lisa could twist the truth in front of Vincent. She was so sure that no matter what, Vincent would believe her over me. I didn't understand why she needed to go so far. She already had Vincent's heart, while I was just a despised wife. Why bother getting into petty battles with me? Vincent couldn't read my thoughts. Seeing my smile, his face darkened further. Of course, I knew it. You'll do anything to climb up. Your previous gentleness was all an act. He paused, then said gravely, my biggest regret is helping you out of pity back then. My chest ached. I sighed, comforting myself. It's okay. Vincent frowned. What's okay? I smiled. I mean, it's okay how much you hate me. I'll be gone soon. Gone? Vincent's brows twitched. Vivian, where do you want to go? I'm telling you, we are married. You'll always be mine. Vincent always amused me. Marrying me caused him pain, but he wouldn't let me go. How twisted could he be? Your brother's lawyer has been hired. Just focus on preparing for the wedding. Wedding preparation, I asked quietly. The rings, the dress, the invitations, will you be with me? Vincent avoided my gaze. I have an important meeting in France. I already knew he wouldn't join me in preparing for the wedding. I also knew he was going to France. According to Lisa's social media, her latest update was about going to France next week. fulfilling her childhood dream, to take a photo under the Eiffel Tower with her loved one. Everyone knew Lisa had divorced her ex-husband by the end of last year. They must be together now. For the last time, I packed Vincent's suitcase like a wife would for her husband. He seemed like he wanted to say something to me before he left, but in the end, he said nothing. I watched him go out and walk toward another woman. Then, I tidied up the room, put on my favorite dress, and went out. Susan was waiting for me in the car, and my grandma was sitting in the back seat. She has dementia now and is like a little kid, eating the lollipop Susan gave her. She got excited when she saw me. Susan asked, "Ready to start your new life?" I held Grandma's hand, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I'm ready." Susan nodded, stepped on the gas, and the car sped away, quickly disappearing into the endless night. Vincent had been traveling in France with Lisa for a week. On their first day in France, just after Vincent got off the plane, he got a call from Vivian. She abruptly asked, "Vincent, did you ever love me?" Vincent was waiting for his luggage and almost impatiently said, "I'm busy. Do you have something important? If not, I'm hanging up." Vivian seemed not to hear him and said slowly, "Vincent, I really loved you." Then the phone call ended, and shortly after, a text message came in with just 2 words, "Goodbye." Vincent frowned. He wanted to call Vivian back to ask what was going on, but saw Lisa happily running towards him. She took his arm and said she wanted to take him to her favorite French restaurant. Vincent didn't want to spoil the mood, so he put his phone in his pocket. The following week was hectic, and Vincent forgot about Vivian's text, until more and more calls started coming in. "Is this Mr. Vincent? I'm the assistant to the wedding dress designer. Mrs. Vivian was supposed to try on her dress today, but she didn't show and her phone is off. Mr. Vincent, we're from the company handling your wedding decorations. There are many details we need to confirm, but we can't reach your fiancé. Do you have time?" Vincent dealt with these calls one by one, then put down his phone, feeling annoyed. Why can't Vivian handle such simple tasks? She was supposed to be preparing for the wedding. Why was there such a mess? He took out his phone and messaged Vivian, "What are you busy with all day? The wedding guests are all high-profile people. If you mess up, it's our family's reputation on the line." Vivian didn't reply for a long time. This was unusual since she always responded to Vincent's messages instantly. Vincent called her, but her phone was off. Never before had Vincent felt so wrapped in anger. He sent a long voice message. "Do you think pretending to be sick didn't work? So you've started slacking off? Do you think that by messing everything up, I'll rush back to help you handle these chores? Let me tell you, we don't have to get married." Still no response from Vivian. Lisa, overhearing, chuckled and said, "You're so anxious. You're just playing into her hands. She's not answering to force you to go back. Ignore her, and keep enjoying yourself here. She'll be the one to break first." Lisa's words worked. Vincent didn't reach out to Vivian again, and continued their trip in France. But somehow, Vincent felt distracted. When Lisa suggested sharing a room, he claimed he had difficulty sleeping and booked 2 rooms instead. Lying alone in bed, Vincent couldn't help but think about Vivian. He remembered seeing her study all night in the library, her thin yet strong back evoking sympathy. When he bought her a drink, she smiled as if receiving a precious gift. Lisa never showed such emotions. As a pampered princess, she expected the world to cater to her. But Vivian, used to hardship, cherished even a little kindness. Suddenly, Vincent felt a pang in his heart. Unable to sleep, he tossed and turned until he sat up, engulfed by the thick night. Maybe he should call her. After all, pretending to be sick to seek his attention wasn't such a big deal. She just wanted his concern. Vincent hesitated, then dialed Vivian's number again. He even thought about softening his stance, admitting that leaving her to handle everything alone before the wedding wasn't right. They were a couple after all, and he ought to give her that much face. But the call still resulted in the cold automated message. "The number you are calling is switched off." What the heck is Vivian up to? Is she sulking because she found out about Lisa and me in France? But so what? She should have accepted that by now, given that she did everything for money. Vincent hesitated for a long time, making numerous calls only to find her phone still off. Finally, he selected Susan's contact. She was Vivian's high school desk mate, and seemed to still be in touch often. Vincent made the call. The call connected. "Susan, it's Vincent," he said in a cold yet courteous tone. "You know about Vivian and my engagement, right? I can't reach her. Do you have any idea where she might be?" He was met with muffled sobs. After a long pause, Susan spoke through tears. "Vivian is dead." When Lisa came to Vincent's room, she noticed something was off. "What's wrong?" she asked. Vincent sat in the shadows, a mysterious expression on his face. Nothing. Do you have a cigarette? Vincent had quit smoking for many years. Even under great work pressure, he restrained himself. But now, his hands were shaking. Lisa handed Vincent a pack of cigarettes. Vincent tried to light one up, but failed several times. Finally, he held it in his hand and asked softly, Lisa, do you remember a girl named Susan from high school? She was close with Vivian. Lisa didn't like hearing Vivian's name. She pursed her lips and said bitterly, I remember a bit. She was a girl who liked to lie. She ruined my bag and never admitted it. Of course, that was slander. Lisa wanted to imply that bad people hang out with bad people. If Vivian's friend was that awful, then Vivian couldn't be any good either. Unexpectedly, Vincent relaxed a little upon hearing Lisa's words. A girl who lies a lot, he muttered, breathing easier. I knew she must be lying to me. Then Vincent frowned. Just before the wedding, Vivian and her friend pull a stunt like this. What do they want? Lisa walked over to him, gently massaging his shoulders, then sat on his lap. Vincent, don't mention Vivian anymore. She just wants to squeeze some more money out of you. Suddenly, Vincent stood up, causing Lisa to almost fall to the ground. I should go back and check. He threw on his coat and headed out, calling his assistant to book a flight home for the next day. Lisa called out behind him, Vincent, we haven't seen the Eiffel Tower yet. The door shut. Vincent didn't respond. Drive faster, he said. The driver replied helplessly, Mr. Vincent, we are already close to speeding. Vincent rubbed his tightly furrowed brow. He didn't know why he was so anxious. Soon, he was home. A figure stood at the door. Was it Vivian waiting for him? Relief washed over him, but anger flared up immediately. So, she was fine all along, just trying to force him to come home. Yet as the car got closer, he realized the figure wasn't Vivian, but another girl. Vivian's friend, Susan. Susan's face showed exhaustion and swollen eyes from crying. Her expression was dull as she looked at the approaching Vincent, her eyes cold and filled with hatred. Vincent had intended to reprimand Susan. How dare she joke about Vivian's life with him? But Susan's intense hatred made him pause. Vincent opened his mouth, but couldn't say the prepared reprimands, only managing, why are you here? Where's Vivian? Susan replied coldly, you want to see Vivian? Vincent almost laughed in anger. Of course. It's my right to see my fiancé, isn't it? Susan turned away indifferently. Fine, I'll take you to her. They arrived at a wild sea area, dangerous because of the reefs and currents, rarely visited by tourists. Susan led Vincent to the highest rock by the sea. The wind ruffled her hair as she said, with red-rimmed eyes, jump, and you'll see Vivian. Susan's authenticity wasn't due to her acting skills, but because I've really done it myself. The night Lisa first texted to provoke me, Vincent wasn't home. While reading the vulgar messages, I ended up at the seaside, barely aware of how I got there. I was desperate and called Susan, asking for help, telling her I felt out of control. That day, Susan drove miles to the shore, holding me as we both cried. She begged me to live, even if just for her. I only have you as a friend. If you die, I'll be too lonely. In high school, Susan was often bullied. She had angered Lisa's group by accident, leading Lisa to accuse her of stealing and damaging her bag. Everyone isolated Susan. Even teachers thought she was beyond help. I was the only one who stayed with her. Now, Susan stood at the seaside again, looking at Vincent, her hatred genuine. She thought Vincent would regret it, but he silently pondered and then laughed. Jump into the sea, he asked, still laughing. You call yourselves friends. Susan, I'll tell you, Vivian would never jump into the sea. She's terrified of water. She wouldn't even take swimming lessons in high school. Besides, she's after our family's fortune. With success so near, why would she commit suicide? Tell her to stop messing around and come home with me immediately. Susan was silent, then returned to the car, taking out a file folder and handing it to Vincent. Here you go. It's Vivian's last gift for you. Vincent, she's not coming back. I sat in a lodge, with my grandma napping not far away. Her grey hair, curled slightly, swayed in the wind. I tucked the blanket in for her, just like she used to do for me long ago. We were poor back then. Grandma's small pension couldn't feed 2 growing kids, so she had to collect recyclables. But we were happy. My brother made toys for me from discarded bottles. I sang songs I learned from TV, and Grandma knitted, each wrinkle on her face a sign of her joy. Now, I couldn't bear the pain anymore, and Grandma was losing her mind. In a way, it was a good thing. If she knew her most devoted grandson was in prison now, it would break her heart. After tucking Grandma in, I looked at the laptop screen. Before leaving, I had hidden a very discreet camera in Vincent's house. On the screen, I clearly saw Vincent return home with the folder. He walked to the bedroom, opened the folder, and emptied its contents. A velvet box, and a key. I saw Vincent's body freeze suddenly. Of course, the first thing he recognized was the velvet box. Inside was the ring he used to propose to me. Vincent's hands began to tremble. He'd never thought there would come a day when I'd return it to him. After all, when I received it, I was so happy, smiling like the happiest person in the world. With trembling hands, he reached for the key. It took him a moment to recognize that it was the key to our bedside drawer. I watched Vincent walk to the drawer. He stared at it for a long time, as if it were Pandora's box that he dared not open. In the end, Vincent opened the drawer. He saw the things I left: a phone, the depression diagnosis, and my diary. The phone was locked with a password. Vincent tried Vivian's birthday. Wrong. He thought for a moment and tentatively entered his own birthday. The phone unlocked. Several new texts popped up quickly. They were from Lisa, sent during the phone's shutdown period. Your fiancé was out having fun with me. So what? He's only marrying you to satisfy his mom. Even if you get married, his heart will always belong to someone else. How pathetic are you, trying these tricks to get him back? Sorry, but your little schemes don't work on me. He hasn't touched you, has he? Poor thing. Want me to send you some of his steamy pics? The more he scrolled up, the more there were. Vincent's fingers continued to shake. He hadn't realized Lisa had been sending these kinds of texts to Vivian for years. So, Vivian knew everything he had been doing. Then why did she still stick around? Vincent closed the texts. He needed a breath, but his attention was suddenly caught by Vivian's screensaver. The screen showed a blurry photo of a young boy in a white shirt doing chores by the window. The wind breezed in, lifting his bangs into a nice arc. Vincent started to shake. He recognized the boy. It was himself at 17. That's why Vivian could endure his indifference and torment day after day. In her darkest times, she'd look at 17-year-old him. It took a while for Vincent to open the depression diagnosis. Vivian's illness stemmed from a toxic relationship. In the long psychological counseling records, the counselor's suggestion appeared every few pages. Why not leave your boyfriend? The ink spread across, with Vivian's response written beside it. Vincent could almost picture her. She'd sit silently for a long time, before bitterly smiling and softly saying, "Because I love him." Vincent, I loved you. That's the last thing she said to herself. And it's the first sentence she wrote in her diary. Vincent, I loved you. When 17-year-old you quietly paid off my grandma's hospital bills and hurriedly ran away, I watched your back and felt a light finally appear in the long dark tunnel. So, even though that light turned into the darkness engulfing me years later, I never regretted it. I really wanted to be your wife, but unfortunately, my health doesn't allow it. Both physical and mental pain are torturing me. Please forgive me. I can't hold on any longer. If possible, I hope you'll treat my family kindly, for the little affection we had. In the days I can't take care of you anymore, please take care of yourself. The diary fell from Vincent's hand. He stood in the middle of the living room, dazed and silent. Impossible. After a long time, I heard him mumbling, "It's just depression. You were so strong. How could it?" A knock on the door. The housekeeper cautiously opened it. "Mr. Vincent, a lady is here, saying she's a friend of your wife." Susan walked in. She handed something to Vincent. "You wanted evidence. Here it is. It's Vivian's death certificate. She jumped into the sea on the first day you went to France, and called you before she died. If you'd come back earlier, you might have seen her one last time. But you stayed in France too long, and now it's too late." According to Vivian's wishes, her ashes were scattered in the sea. Susan's voice was low. This lie was something we'd planned long ago. The death certificate was well forged, enough to withstand Vincent's scrutiny. But Vincent didn't scrutinize it. That thin piece of paper felt unbearably heavy. As soon as Susan placed it in his hand, it fell from his grasp. She was sick. Why didn't she tell me? Vincent mumbled. Susan let out a cold laugh. She did. You didn't believe her. Vincent's body trembled again, almost unable to stand. Even if she convinced you, would you have cared? Your heart was always with your first love, Lisa. Why did you bother with Vivian? Susan spoke all in one breath. Vincent stood with his head down, sunlight casting a harsh light on his pale face, looking fragile and shattered. Susan took a deep breath, finally calming her emotions, then said, "Vivian said she packed up everything, so you can marry the one you love cleanly. We all thought Vincent would definitely marry Lisa after I left, so I decided to be the bigger person for once." But Vincent's reaction entirely caught me off guard. He raised his head, his voice calm, as if suppressing some emotion. "How can you say that? The one I'm supposed to marry is Vivian." He looked at Susan and said calmly, "Where is Vivian? I'll go bring her home." Susan was stunned, not understanding why Vincent reacted this way. Vincent walked past Susan toward the door like he was in a dream, I'll go bring Vivian home. The next second, he collapsed. When Lisa came to see Vincent, he had just woken from unconsciousness. Lisa stormed into the hospital room, unaware of what had happened. She complained loudly. The doctors said you fainted from strong emotional stress. What did Vivian do this time? She saw Vincent staying silent and got even angrier. She took money to marry into your family, and she can't even show some professionalism. Shut up, Vincent suddenly said. Lisa was stunned. Vivian didn't marry me for the money. Vincent's hand kept rubbing Vivian's phone under the blanket. On the screen, a 17-year-old boy stayed forever young and perfect. She married me because she loved me. Lisa froze, then her voice turned sharp. Love you. A woman desperate for money marries into a wealthy family for love. Vincent, don't be stupid. Vincent suddenly laughed. He laughed and laughed until tears fell down. Lisa, you and we're too smart. The foolish one was Vivian. How could someone be so foolish? Loved me so much just because of a fleeting sweetness. When she was 17. She ended up throwing her life away. Vincent really hated himself. When he and Vivian met for an arranged date, he had just broken up with Lisa. His mother had broken them up and strongly pushed him into new dates. He met Vivian when he was in the most rebellious phase. She sat across the table, wearing a cheap shirt and skirt, giving him a flattering smile. So, he assumed from the start that she was just one of many women aiming to marry into a wealthy family. And after that, whatever she tried to explain, he wouldn't listen. Lisa was just about to retort, but suddenly caught onto a key word in Vincent's speech. What do you mean by throwing her life away? Vincent didn't answer. Lisa was dazed for a long time, then said in disbelief, She died. Vincent turned calmly to look at Lisa. Depression. Lisa covered her mouth quickly. To be honest, Lisa wasn't a very smart person, but she knew one simple truth. The living cannot compete with the dead. Vivian was too perfect. She loved Vincent passionately for so many years, gave selflessly, and died right before the wedding without getting anything in return. After a long moment of fluster, Lisa stammered, How did Vivian die? She wasn't strong enough. Depression can be treated. Vincent threw Vivian's phone in front of Lisa. Each message was shocking to read. Lisa shut up instantly. Depression could be treated, but at that moment, those messages triggering the depression patients, Lisa was struck by great despair. She had been so confident that Vivian would never match up to her, but now she felt powerless, like she could never win against her. She tried to make one last struggle. Vincent, I did all of this because I love you so much. She cried, You can't abandon me. I divorced for you. Everyone knows I like you. If you leave me, who else will I marry? What responded to Lisa was a cold look she had never seen on Vincent before. Vincent stood up and opened the hospital room door. Get out, he said calmly but firmly. I don't want to see you again. Lisa's heart sank deeply, and she cried out, Vincent, don't you understand? Vincent finally exploded. I told you to get out. The security came in to take Lisa away, and she started screaming irrationally. At this moment, she no longer cared. How can you treat me like this? Do you think it was me who killed Vivian? No, Vincent, it was you. You killed Vivian. Lisa laughed crazily, because she could clearly see Vincent's face turning pale in an instant. Lisa was taken out by the security, leaving only Vincent in the room. He collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. The wind blew in from outside, and the glass reflected his unshaven, haggard face. On the screen, the boy's hair was blown by the wind, making the picture look bright and beautiful. The 17-year-old boy was no longer perfect. The 17-year-old girl was already dead. Vincent covered his face with the blanket. He finally cried out loud, What? You're turning yourself in? In the living room full of luxurious rosewood furniture, Vincent's mother stood up in shock. Vincent didn't speak, only nodding. Why? Leo has taken all the blame. Why do you need to? His willingness to take the blame depended on me giving his sister happiness. But Mom, I didn't fulfill that. Vincent rubbed his face, which looked extremely haggard, after only a few days. No, I don't agree. This is foolish. Vincent didn't try to convince his mother again. He walked out and sent a text to Susan. Go tell Leo. Let him retract his statement. I owe his sister too much, and don't want to owe more. The investigation might still take some time. Vincent decided to go to the seaside. Instead of choosing a flight, he chose a green train. During their graduation trip, Vincent's class took the train to the seaside. Back then, the one sitting next to Vincent was Vivian. She was incredibly happy. Vincent smiled and asked why she was so glad. She lowered her head, her ears turning pink, because I love the sea. In that moment, the green train traveled through a sea of cherry blossoms, and the shy look of the girl against the pink scenery outside the window seemed as beautiful as spring. Vincent felt a slight stir in his heart. At this moment, cherry blossoms were still blooming outside, but no one sat beside Vincent. Leaning against the train window, Vincent closed his eyes and made a wish. If heaven could let him meet Vivian again, he would pay any price. That evening, I fed my grandma a bowl of egg drop soup and watched her quietly fall asleep. The innkeeper was a kind and good-hearted woman. She promised to take care of my grandma for a while after I left. Someone will come to pick her up. I said it might be a man named Leo, or a woman named Susan. It doesn't matter who, both can take her with them. In the meantime, please take care of her. I'll leave enough money for the room and living expenses. No problem. The owner of the bed and breakfast chatted as they busily went about their tasks. Where are you headed? Me? I smiled. I'm going to a faraway island. We're already by the sea, aren't we? Planning a trip abroad, the owner said enviously. How long will you be gone? Still smiling, I replied, for a long time. That long? Your grandma and your brother and friends will miss you like crazy. They probably will, I said, but it's okay, we'll meet again eventually. After the chat with the owner, I turned around and saw a figure standing outside the window. I wasn't very surprised. Closing the door behind me, I walked outside. In the glow of the setting sun, I made my way over to someone I had loved for many years. Vincent, I called softly as I approached him. He seemed to snap out of a long daze and reached out to touch my face. Vivian, this is real. It was the first time I saw Vincent cry. His tears fell and his voice shook. You're punishing me, aren't you? The death certificate is fake, right? You're doing this to make me regret it, right? Well, you've succeeded. I've lost. He continued. I realized I love you. I just didn't understand my own heart before. I sighed softly. Vincent, the sunset by the sea is beautiful. Let's go see it. The shore was wild, with jagged rocks everywhere. We climbed to the highest one and watched the waves crash against the rocks below, sending up frothy white spray. I took off my jacket, revealing just a thin strap dress beneath. My arms were covered in shocking scars. Vincent glanced at them and then quickly averted his eyes as if burned. The death certificate is fake, but the hurt you caused me is real. I need to confess something to you, I said softly. My plan to fake my death wasn't targeting you. Vincent, I loved you, but I realized that I loved the 17-year-old you, and that boy doesn't exist anymore. That day, I went to the beach wanting to end my life. Not just because of Lisa's message, but because I had been diagnosed with stomach cancer. That's the ultimate truth. My fake death plan wasn't to make Vincent regret, I continued. It was to spare those who truly love me from sadness. Susan doesn't know about my illness. She thought my recurring fevers were just depression weakening my immune system. That's why she cried and begged me not to die at the beach. She said I was her only friend, and if I died, she couldn't go on. When Vincent was my light, I also became someone else's light. For Susan, who was bullied, I brightened her life. I know the pain of losing that light, so I didn't want my best friend to ever feel that kind of sorrow. I told Susan that I would go to a distant island to recover, and that because I had to avoid you, I wouldn't be coming back for a very long time. After my brother gets out of prison, Susan will tell him the whole truth. Vincent, what I want you to do for me is keep this secret, I said quietly. Vincent looked increasingly desperate. No, I can't agree to that. I shook my head and smiled. You will agree. The sunset disappeared into the sea at that moment. I looked at Vincent, still smiling, and fell backward. Vivian, this was the ending I chose for myself. I love the sea. It's deep and can bury all the love and hate of the world. Vincent stared blankly at the dark waters below. The sun had completely set, and the sea was pitch black. Behind him, the sound of police sirens broke the silence. His phone had missed dozens of calls from his assistant and his mother. Leo had likely already confessed. The police were here to arrest him. Those charges of bribery, embezzlement, massive tax evasion, and other economic crimes were all his. Vivian loved a clean, warm-hearted teenager, but he was no longer that person. In the future, the once high and mighty Vincent would become just another ordinary convict behind bars. If only time could stay frozen at 17. If not, then let it stop here. Is this Vincent? The police car stopped behind him. Please. The officer didn't finish his sentence. Vincent had already leaped into the dark waves. A year later, Susan was watching TV with Grandma while Leo mashed some peaches for her. Grandma's teeth weren't good anymore. The peaches, once mashed, were something she could still eat a little of. Peaches. Grandma suddenly turned, looking at the peaches in Leo's hand. Save some for Vivian. Leo paused, stunned. When we were kids, we couldn't even afford peaches. Grandma would scavenge leftover ones from fruit stalls, cut out the rotten parts, and the rest was still sweet. Vivian always said she didn't like peaches, so Grandma and Leo would share them. Only later did Leo realize that peaches were actually Vivian's favorite fruit. Vivian was always like that. She always thought of others she loved and rarely herself, but at least she should be well now. Vivian is enjoying herself on the island, with big mangoes and golden pineapples, Susan said, showing Grandma a photo on her phone. In the picture, I was wearing a vacation dress, smiling brightly beside a fruit stand, flashing a peace sign at the camera. Somewhere in the world, there's a small mailbox filled with nearly 100 pre-edited photos. They would be sent out on a schedule to update my loved ones on my life. Grandma looked at the photo of me, clapped her hands in joy. Good, Vivian has eaten so much bitterness. She deserves to enjoy the sweetness. Leo and Susan both smiled. The light outside was bright, filling the room with warmth. My loved ones' faces were lit with smiles. This was everything I ever wanted.